Thanks for jumping on. I said, Josh, if I ever say anything, I'm not talking to Josh Linton. I'm talking to Josh Blackwelder. So we appreciate you jumping on to our very informal but fun Tech to Exec podcast. And I'm Mike Linton. I'm the CEO of Valcom.
And I'm Josh Linton. I'm the CIO of Alcom, and we're happy to have you on
Awesome.
here, Josh.
Yeah, great to meet you both. I don't know if we've met previous, but good to meet again if this is the second time.
Yeah, we just met and we appreciate you jumping on. Just loved reading your bio and your background. And then we haven't had one of these with a fellow Utah. Are you in Utah?
I am, yeah. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
So the most important thing we'll ask today is which college football team do you cheer for?
I'm definitely more on the geek side, so I'm actually not a sports person.
Oh,
Okay.
very diplomatic
Safe,
answer.
Yeah.
safe answer.
And and we're going to be able to ask a lot of those questions. So we'd love if you could introduce yourself and just tell us your background and your journey about how you got to where you got as deputy CISO of a great company, SentinelOne.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about that. So, I went to school here locally, and during my senior year, I started an internship with a security startup in 2000. So the very early days, and they started with a product to allow local vulnerability scans from Nessus to be displayed in a web portal. So you could essentially scan all of your external infrastructure and see the results combined in a web interface. And this is before Nessus sort of had the front end web GUI and all that. And then shortly after that, I worked for dynamic charting company that produced, on-the-fly charts for like E-Trade and Fidelity. So really
Oh,
got familiar with the big, commercial web application servers and understood the ins and outs and how to, configure things for those environments and, get a little glimpse into some of these larger environments. And that was really interesting to kind of work as a sales engineer in that field. And it was kind of fun to have, the security background and then coupled with the web application server experience for several years. And then I got into the audit world as a PCI auditor,
oh
right?
wow.
And got to do some audits for some of the largest payment processing facilities in the world.
Is that as exciting as it sounds?
It was actually pretty fun.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah, like working for WorldPay and
Yeah.
Elevon, and seeing their mainframe infrastructures and
Wow.
kind of how they tool for redundancy and large volume transactions on this
Yeah.
very specialized hardware
That's
you know
amazing.
was fascinating. And then also worked as a pen tester for Protivity. So that was a
Oh.
good time, and did some interesting engagements there. And then worked for a large bank, one of the largest in the world, Royal Bank of Scotland. So was a security architect over there and a team man. So worked for the Royal Bank of Scotland as part of their IT order around cease and desist to improve their IT operations. So that was a very interesting project to improve their regulatory compliance and bring it up to standards so that they could get that block removed from the FDIC. So that
Hmm.
was an interesting journey, and really kind of exposed me to the large enterprise acquisition sprawl, and the number of companies that a company can sort of acquire over decades, and sort of the technology debt that needs to be paid at some point, and just the hundreds and thousands of applications that need help and tending, et cetera. So that was a very eye-opening experience and kind of the introduction to the more, formally regulated side of banking. Um, and then started working for Adobe and was there for 6.5 years, managed the digital experience security team, and had a very large scale data center operation and helped them do a lot of their initial migration to the cloud. So that was really fun to sort of be on the cusp of that, sort of change, that technology revolution, moving to the cloud and, building all things, cloud native and, seeing how that transition happened from, the data center to the cloud environments. And then after Adobe, I worked for Instructure, the makers of Canvas, for a couple years, and that was also a extremely fun, job. Just the vast number of clients they would serve and students on a daily basis. Something on an order of 8 million concurrent students every morning,
Wow.
and they all have to log in and they need to have security and a
My
lot
kids
of
are glad when it goes down when they can't log into
yeah,
their stuff.
yeah, I could see that. So. And then, that's where I became a customer of SentinelOne and really liked the product. And I just kind of put in the back of my mind, if I ever see anything open up at SentinelOne, I'll apply. And, several months later, I saw, a job posting and I applied on LinkedIn and that's how I ended up at SentinelOne. So I've been here for just over 4 years now.
Well, what a
Wow.
fascinating career. Your
Right?
experience has spanned over so many things. If you look back at all of your opportunities and all the different jobs, what what one stands out the most of where you learned the most and why? Like how did they create the organization of learning of really developing your both IT, cybersecurity skills and all of those things? Like does anyone stand out where it was just, oh, this is where I learned so much?
Yeah, I think it was that first job working for as a sales engineer for the dynamic charting company, and I had kind of worked for a very small company previous to that, and you kind of can do whatever you want. It's kind of the Wild West, but when you're selling to somebody like Fidelity or E-Trade, they're very mature companies and things have to be done perfectly. They really care about uptime and reliability and as well as security. But they're very focused on the performance of the customer experience and such a wide array of technologies to be exposed to. So we would have to write integrations for Java, .NET. Uh, uh, Back then it was, Cold Fusion, WebSphere, and, really kind of understand, how each of those platforms operate and, how to optimize the product within those environments. And so, it was really a fun experience to sort of play with in, all those different technologies and see how they operate and see the differences between them and was extremely eye-opening to me from like an enterprise application experience. So that
I
was
love that.
probably one massive shift. Yeah.
I love that. And that leads me to one more question. Then I know Josh has several questions he wants to ask you. You've built security programs at Adobe, Instructure, now at SentinelOne. What's the difference between securing a product you sell, like the Instructure, versus
Yeah.
securing the company itself? Like, we'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely major differences in terms of how you deliver satisfaction in both areas, right? And so I do get to run the application and product security team as a part of my current role, and it's important to be able to provide a secure experience for our customers, and it's also a little bit of a shift that most people don't have to deal with, right? Like a lot of SaaS companies, you're operating in very much, web application code and the concerns around that and cloud environments. But now you have to throw in, native C and C++ development for different hardware requirements for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and all the concerns around those particular operating systems at a very deep level. And so it's very much uh, a sort of a split brain type of a role, right? Where you have a whole different set of mindset for the on the customer installed agent versus the way that you run the SaaS environment, right? And so it's very much kind of two separate programs, but where we can gain synergies and align them both, that makes a lot of sense. But the way that software is developed and built is very different between the two areas of the business. So yeah, it's interesting because it's not something that a lot of folks have to do anymore. And you're either kind of the pure SaaS or there's very few companies that kind of span both. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's fascinating. And I think that as you speak, I'm just reminded of all the different things that you've done in your career, right? And the level the provides just kind of this wisdom that I don't think, as we've talked to other people, I'm not sure that we've really talked to anybody who's had the varied experience that you've had, right? From audit and all these other things. But one of the questions that I have is around kind of the compliance, your SOC 2s, your ISO, PCI, all of these things, and then kind of actual security. I want to get your opinion on, are they helpful? Is it mostly just like, hey, it's a regulation thing? Like, what's your opinion on how effective they are versus, are they just creating tension around, you know, within the organization, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the compliance frameworks are very much a part of the go-to-market strategy. In order to sell in certain markets, there are table stakes, and that these exist in various areas of the globe or the industry in which you're trying to operate, right? And so, in many cases, you can't operate or sell or have a sales motion in these markets unless you kind of get that base layer. And so, it's extremely important to support the revenue generation side of the business and make sure that they can meet, the way that they want to expand globally, and that we can provide the artifacts and, all the necessary certifications to sort of enable what they have planned for their global kind of sales expansion. So we have a very, I would say, wide range of compliance frameworks that we adhere to sell in, the Asian markets, the European markets, the Australian market, and uh, the U.S. public sector markets, including, federal and CGIS and those sorts of environments. And um, so
Do you see those compliance frameworks being helpful, or do people just checklist them off and then say we're secure, or do they check them off and say we're secure now, but they're
yeah,
not really secure? Like, what
Yeah,
do you
like, are they
see actually on the ground?
are they comprehensive, or would you, if I say, hey, I'm compliant here, is that enough, or do you
yeah.
suggest people need to do more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we use the safe base trust portal that integrates into Salesforce to sort of speed through the procurement process with our customers. And that's been a tremendously valuable tool because it takes sort of the region that the customer's in and the type of business, and then automatically suggests like what artifacts the procurement folks that are, checking off their checklist need to sort of move it through the procurement process, right? And, we sell a lot to very large companies. So the procurement process is very much typically separated from the security review process, right? So you go through the procurement process and they check off all their things. And then when you're selling to, you know, companies that, are very highly concerned about security, like say a crypto company, there's a whole layer that comes after you get through the procurement process, right? And that can include, um, uh, you know, questions and meetings with myself or some of the architects within the company. That can include, third party, you know, penetration test exercises. That can include, other analysis from other third party firms. So it can get quite, uh, there can be a lot of added things besides just the compliance checklist, depending on the rigor of the company that you're dealing with in terms of how they view security. So some of these discussions can get pretty intense, and you can imagine, doing business with one of the large cloud providers. It's a very much um, you know, a very in-depth journey of discovery on all the things that they want to talk about and discover. And so, yeah, those are kind of fun, actually.
So talking about rigor, you got Instructure ready and their entire security program revamped ahead of the IPO.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience. Like what stands out? Do most companies underestimate what it takes to get security IPO ready? Like what is that like? And what experience can you share around that?
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to, um, there's so many aspects of security, right? And it's sort of that first dollar in every area that makes the difference, right? You need to have some capabilities in each part of your program. And when you're going to a regulated type of business, it's publicly traded, there are certain, just standards that are non-negotiable, right? You need to do logging, you need to do EDR, you need to have some sort of AppSec program. You've got to have a compliance program. You've got to have your SOX, IT, GRC. You've got to have all these things in place, and they need to come together in such a way that you can support that business objective of, maintaining status as a publicly traded company. Now, incidents are reportable, and so if you haven't invested those sort of base level dollars in each of the pieces of the security technology stack, you're very much, flying in a very risky position. So, helping the business understand what's the minimum investment needed in each aspect of the security stack, and how do we get there in a rapid fashion to support, the IPO, and get staff aligned to sort of help staff those different pieces of the technology stack, and bring everything into a comprehensive program that can sort of be monitored from an executive level, and understand that all the components are indeed functioning in the correct manner. And this is another way that you can kind of show to your execs that you have the base level controls, is through some of these compliance frameworks like ISO and SOC 2, et cetera.
That's great.
I love that. Just the first dollar in that silo or in that section of cybersecurity. I think that is very, very good point. So, Josh.
Yeah, I think my one of my questions, one that we ask a lot of our guests, is really around, as you're meeting with executives and talking to them, or have an opportunity here to kind of tell them, what is one thing that they miss, or that you would try to coach them from a technical perspective. I think sometimes we see that the business side of things, obviously they know what they're doing, but sometimes they miss the technical side. And, I think you also have your MBA, but talk to a little bit to the executive level. What are some things you would tell them as they're looking to invest or improve their cybersecurity posture? How would you communicate with them the things that you think are most important?
Sure. And if you kind of think back of where security came from back in the 2000s, you're very much like closing doors, to a single building, and everything was kind of behind this, this wall and this firewall, right? It's like so powerful. And now, there's basically no firewalls. Your zero trust, your applications are, SaaS apps all over the place. Your laptop is communicating out to all sorts of different um, uh, applications. You don't really have an IT data center anymore. Everything's in the cloud, right? So there's a huge shift in terms of the mindset. And, I think one of the most important things to hire for is a flexible mindset, right? And people that don't view the security landscape as static or figured out. And we're very much in another couple revolutions that we've seen in the last year or two, right? So we've gone to generative uh, AI to now the open claw world, and it's just fascinating to see how quickly things are shifting within the world, and now with things like um, codecs and autonomous development. I mean, it's just the capabilities are evolving so rapidly that if you're hiring the person that has the fixed mindset, they just simply cannot kind of rotate to these new worlds that are sort of building really rapidly in front of us. So hiring folks with a good mindset that are willing to learn, and also building that culture in your team, right? Like a big thing that's important for us right now is brown bag presentations. Things are moving so quickly. We really need to learn from each other. And the second big thing is, identity is key, right? And that has been the key since the 90s, right? When the hackers go in, they go for your identity system, and that's game over. It really hasn't changed that much. There's a lot of different pieces in between and so forth, but your identity system is really where the attackers are going to go, right? And to that point, folks that have not adopted a full passkey only strategy are really just playing with fire.
Hmm.
Uh, Folks that do push or SMS, like there is no room for that in today's speed. The the um, the ability of these attackers to move autonomously is so powerful now. If they get a hold of your Okta landing page, I mean, you have no hope.
Well, that'll make you nervous.
Well, the good thing is that we have the technologies to combat a lot of this, right? And we're seeing additional passkey support by
Yeah.
various organizations every day. New services support it. Your main identity providers already support it, and so it's just a matter of integrating those. Having a comprehensive portfolio underneath your IDP. But there's really no excuse today in 2026 for organizations to not be full passkey,
Well,
tied to biometric.
I think the only in as I was thinking about this, I'm like, the scary part is the only excuse is we're not used to having to move that fast.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
not that passkeys haven't been around, but the push for passkeys has, I mean, a couple of years in this real push.
Yeah.
I mean, we pushed for passwords for 10 years
Yeah.
for complex passwords, right?
Yeah.
We've gone from complex passwords, begging, begging, begging for 10 years to passkeys need to be done to passkeys are absolutely critical in like this super short time frame. And I
Yeah.
think we're just not prepared to move that fast, right? And that's
Yeah.
not an excuse, but I think that's one of the things that makes it a little scary is we're just not ready to like move that fast. But we need to be. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. So
One of the interesting things on that topic as well is how businesses have sort of forced the IDP providers to support this in a really great way.
Hmm.
But on the consumer side, we're still just kind of hanging out there. Like, my bank account is still,
Yeah.
it's like very difficult to find a bank that has like passkey support. And it's really unfortunate that, the consumer side is sort of stuck to that 10-year time frame you were mentioning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it brings up a point that I think all CIOs and CEOs are thinking about is I've got budget for one, maybe two major security initiatives. How do I decide where to spend it? And so I'm going to put the question to you. If a CIO came to you and said, I've got one major security initiative I can do this year, how would you tell them to think about that? What would you tell them to spend it on? Like, do you have something that comes to mind, or how would you frame that to them?
Yeah, yeah. Typically, when you're dealing with a lot of unknowns like that, I don't know the industry, the type of application, the business. I would hire a red team, a good red team to come in and really poke at this thing from the outside. And I have some firms that I've dealt with that have really good success rates, you know, and that's a great way to sort of figure out like from a real world perspective, what should I prioritize first? Like, how did these guys get in? And like build your list from that. And then you have a very data-driven approach to prioritization. Like you can line up the pen test findings to the investment and say, we're going to invest here first, and next year we'll invest here, or maybe you can get additional budget because it's alarming to the board or whatever. So, budgets are fixed until the risk is too high to accept it.
Yeah.
So,
So the red team gets in, right?
yeah.
Are you seeing that be adopted? Are people adopting that mindset? Because I think that's logical to just go and hire a red team, see where your holes are, plug the holes in
Yeah.
priority of what what they did. That seems simple, but I don't see a lot of people taking that. Or are you seeing that
Yeah.
catch on as far as
And I,
adoption?
I think this goes into the flexible mindset, right? Is like I think my program's great, but does it actually stand the test of, a really competent team? And that's where sometimes the feedback comes in and says, you had all this planned, but in actuality, we need to inject a couple things here that are higher priority and here. And it helps sort of battle test your plan a little bit to make sure that it has the appropriate data behind it to know where you're going to invest your resources for the year, right? And
Mm.
so I use it as sort of um, ha, did we plan correctly, and should we alter our plan based on this new data, right? So I
Got it.
wouldn't I wouldn't replace one or the other, but like, based on your scenario of like just coming in, like where do I invest money at this company I don't really know a lot about? And this is sort of the process we follow when we acquire a new company, right? Is we send a really talented red team after them, and then we also perform, code analysis with a third party, and we get all that data back, and then we know like when we acquire this entity, this is where we need to invest first to shore them up because now once our brand gets attached to this company, I mean, it really sort of, you know, uh, brings a lot of interest into that particular target, right? And people poke around a lot more, and so it's important to sort of have that data on hand right at the beginning, and depending on the severity of the issues, you know, um, the uh, the financial firms will make them close issues before they'll close the deal. So we've seen that before, which is
Mm.
fantastic because like when you acquire a company, you're not actually allowed to tell them anything to do, but the entity closing the deal can, say that we're not going to close until you fix these particular security holes.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, we really appreciate you coming by today and
Yeah.
visiting with us. I guess coming by, joining our Zoom call. But one, we want to kind of give you the last chance as our audience, I think, is made up of kind of technical leaders who are speaking to their executives. Um, Last thing you want to tell them. Uh,
Um, I think the most important thing to tell people about is just how fast the AI technology is moving. And it seems like every week there's a new set of articles that sort of is just like, oh wow, like this is the capability this week. And the amount of speed that we're seeing here in the possible disruption to your business, not just through attackers, but through competitors, is just alarming. I have a brother-in-law that he's not technical in any way, but he kind of saw an opportunity, and then he got aligned with an expert in vibe coding, and in a week has got an application prototyped that's working, that takes customer data and is like possibly going to be disruptive to this particular niche industry. And so it's not just attackers that we have to worry about. It's, are we innovating quick enough and satisfying our customers, or are we leaving too much room for somebody to come in and disrupt us because we're not taking advantage of the technology that's available to us? And so, every aspect of the business needs to wake up to, what's happening in the AI world, because it's going to be disruptive on every front. And, what I tell my folks is the way that you lose your job is by being the AI consumer. The way that you keep your job is by being the person that builds the AI tools, right? And so we want to build all of that skill set within our teams so that when you think about a problem, you solve it with AI. And now you're, you know, X times more efficient than the person sitting next to you that's consuming AI, right? And so be the builder of AI. And, I think that's the best way to sort of preserve your marketplace as well as your job, I think, in this current market.
Amazing.
That is so good. Josh, thank you so much for your time. We
Yeah, of
really
course.
appreciate both you spending the time here and also the partnership. Your
Yeah.
partnership means a lot to us, and you've been a great partner. We appreciate you building great technologies that our customers love, and for securing them, securing your technologies and the technologies that secure our customers and our clients. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
We really
Yeah. Thanks
appreciate you
for having
joining
me.
us.
Thanks so much for
Okay,
reaching out. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Take
appreciate
care,
it.
guys.
Well,
Thanks. Have a
see
good
you
one.
later.
We'll see
Bye.
you.